Hey everyone, and welcome back. I always get excited for these deep dives into different career paths, and today we're talking about one that just screams sophistication wine sommeliers.
It's a fascinating field, and we're going to really uncork some valuable insights to help you nail that interview.
That's right, we've got role catchers, career guides, interview guides, and even a touch of AI magic to give us an edge.
We're talking about going beyond just textbook knowledge here. This is about giving you practical advice you can actually use.
Love that. So let's jump right in with a classic interview question, one I'm sure many aspiring sommeliers face. Explain the difference between Cabernet Sauvignon and Pinot Noir.
Ah, yes, the classic Cabernet versus Pinot Noir. It's almost a rite of passage for any aspiring sommelier.
It feels like such a staple question, but I can also see how it could be a bit nerve-wracking.
Absolutely. But instead of seeing it as a test, think of it as an opportunity. This is your chance to showcase your passion for wine, your knowledge, and your ability to communicate those nuances to anyone, whether they're a seasoned connoisseur or a curious beginner.
So how do you approach this question in a way that truly stands out?
Instead of just listing off the technical differences like tannins and acidity, try painting a picture with your words.
Ooh, I like that.
Mm,
Paint a picture. So how do you do that exactly?
Think about the experience of each wine. Imagine you're guiding a diner through their options. For Cabernet Sauvignon, you might say something like, imagine a wine that's bold and full-bodied, like a symphony with layers of dark fruit, cedar, and maybe even a hint of tobacco. You could even use words like robust or powerful.
Okay, I can already picture that rich, complex Cabernet. What about Pinot Noir? How would you describe its essence?
Pinot Noir is all about elegance and finesse. It's a bit more delicate, like a ballet dancer, with notes of red berries, rose petals, and often a subtle earthiness. You might use words like silky or graceful to convey its character.
It's amazing how the right words can really evoke the feeling of the wine, even without actually tasting it. Now, you mentioned earlier that RoleCatcher's AI can give us an extra edge in our interview prep. How does that come into play here?
That's a great question. RoleCatcher's AI is really remarkable. It can analyze job descriptions and pick up on the specific skills and qualities each employer is looking for.
Oh, interesting. So it's not just about giving a generic answer, it's about tailoring your response to what this particular employer values.
Precisely. So, for example, if the job description emphasizes customer interaction and creating a memorable dining experience, you'd want to focus on how you'd use your knowledge of Cabernet Sauvignon and Pinot Noir to guide a customer towards the perfect choice for their palate and their meal.
It's like having a secret weapon that helps you decode what the interviewer is really looking for. Okay, so we've tackled one classic question. Let's move on to another one that I think many people find daunting. Describe your experience with wine pairing.
That's a good one. And it's where things can get a little tricky, especially if you're just starting out in the field and don't have years of experience under your belt.
Exactly. I imagine many aspiring sommeliers might feel intimidated by this question if they're still building their practical experience. So what's your advice for approaching this one authentically?
It's simple, be honest and enthusiastic. Don't be afraid to say, I'm passionate about the art of wine pairing and I'm constantly exploring new combinations and expanding my knowledge. Then talk about your process.
So instead of focusing on a lack of formal experience, you're highlighting your dedication to learning and your genuine interest in the craft.
Precisely. You could discuss specific pairings you've researched or experimented with, even if it was just for your own enjoyment at home. Have you taken any courses or workshops on wine pairing? Mention those too.
It's about turning that perceived weakness into an opportunity to showcase your passion and commitment to growth. Now, speaking of growth, I'd love to touch on the career outlook for sommeliers. Is this a field with promising opportunities?
That's a question I'm sure many listeners are wondering about, and I'm happy to share that, according to RoleCatcher's Career Guide, the job outlook for sommeliers is quite positive.
That's great to hear. What factors are contributing to this positive trend?
The guide highlights that the food and hospitality industries are projected to experience steady growth in the coming years. And as people continue to develop a taste for finer dining experiences, the demand for skilled sommeliers is only likely to rise.
That's music to my ears, or should I say notes to my palate. But let's get back to those interview questions. What about this one? What is your process for selecting wines for a restaurant's wine list?
That's a great question. It really gets to the heart of a sommelier's role in a restaurant setting.
It seems like a daunting task, especially considering the sheer variety of wines available. Where do you even begin?
You're absolutely right. It's a balancing act. You need to consider the restaurant's cuisine, target audience, price points, and of course, your own knowledge and expertise to curate a collection that's both appealing and profitable.
So it's about striking that balance between what you know will be a hit with the diners and what aligns with the restaurant's overall concept and brand.
Exactly. So when answering this question, you might say something like, I would start by working closely with the chef to understand the menu's direction, the overall style of the cuisine, and any signature dishes. Then, I'd research wines that complement the flavors and enhance the dining experience.
It's like creating a symphony of flavors, making sure each element harmonizes with the others.
I love that analogy. You want to create a cohesive and memorable dining experience. And of course, you'd also need to consider practical factors like budget considerations, storage capacity, and staying up to date on current wine trends and customer preferences.
Speaking of staying current, I imagine that's a big part of being a successful sommelier. How do you typically handle a situation where a customer is unsure about what wine to order? I'm sure that happens all the time.
It does, but it's one of my favorite parts of the job. It's an opportunity to connect with the customer, guide them on a journey of discovery, and help them find a wine they'll truly enjoy.
So instead of feeling pressured by their indecision, you see it as a chance to share your passion and expertise.
Absolutely. The key is to make the customer feel comfortable and empowered, not overwhelmed. Instead of bombarding them with options, start by asking open-ended questions about their preferences. What kind of food are they having? Do they typically gravitate towards red or white, lighter or fuller-bodied wines?
It's like being a wine detective, gathering clues to solve the case of the perfect bottle.
Exactly. It's about understanding their tastes and then using your knowledge to recommend something that will complement their meal and exceed their expectations. And sometimes using an analogy can really help to make the experience more approachable, especially for someone who's a little bit intimidated by the world of wine.
Oh, I like that idea. An analogy, can you give me an example?
Sure. Let's say they're having a steak and they tell you they usually enjoy a bold red. You might say, if you like big, robust reds, then think of this Cabernet Sauvignon as a classic film noir. It's got those dark, intense flavors, a bit of mystery, and a long, satisfying finish.
Okay, I can totally see how that would resonate with someone. It makes the wine seem more relatable and less intimidating.
Exactly. It's about meeting them where they are and guiding them on a journey of discovery. And hey, don't be afraid to offer a small taste before they commit to a full glass. It shows you're confident in your recommendation and invested in their experience.
Absolutely. Now, let's shift gears for a moment and talk about a scenario that I think every sommelier dreads, the dreaded customer complaint. You know, when someone sends back a perfectly good bottle.
Oh, I know exactly what you mean. It's definitely a situation that requires a delicate touch.
It can be tough not to take it personally, especially when you're confident in your palate and your knowledge.
You're right, it's not always easy. But remember, it's not really about the wine at that point. It's about the customer's experience. And their experience is valid, even if you don't necessarily agree with their assessment of the wine.
So how do you handle a situation like that gracefully and professionally? Let's say the interview question is, can you describe a time when you had to handle a difficult customer complaint related to wine?
Okay, that's a very common question, and here's how to approach it. First and foremost, listen attentively to the customer's complaint without interrupting. Let them fully express their dissatisfaction and really try to understand their perspective.
That makes sense. Resist the urge to jump in with defenses or explanations right away.
Right. Once they've had a chance to share their thoughts, validate their feelings, even if you don't agree with their assessment of the wine.
So you're not necessarily agreeing with their palate, but you are acknowledging their experience and their feelings.
Exactly. You might say something like, I understand this isn't what you were hoping for, or I'm sorry to hear you're not enjoying the wine.
It's about showing empathy and understanding.
Precisely. Then, once you've listened and validated, offer a solution. Maybe suggest a different bottle, perhaps something with a similar flavor profile but a different region or producer.
Okay, that makes sense. But what if the customer is being completely unreasonable? Like insisting that the perfectly chilled Chablis is warm or something like that. How do you handle a situation where you know the wine is not flawed, but the customer is still unhappy?
Well, even in those situations, it's crucial to remain calm and professional. You can say something like, I understand your concern, and while I can assure you that this wine was stored and served at the appropriate temperature, I'd be happy to offer you a taste from a freshly opened bottle to put your mind at ease.
That's a great tactic. It addresses their concerns without compromising your expertise or suggesting that there was anything wrong with the wine.
Right. And you know what? This is where RoleCatcher's AI-powered feedback can be super helpful.
Oh, yeah, I was just thinking that. It's like having a virtual interview coach right there in your pocket.
Exactly. You can practice answering these tough interview questions, record yourself, and then get personalized feedback on your delivery, tone of voice, and even body language.
It's like having a secret weapon to help you refine your interview skills and project that perfect balance of confidence and empathy. Okay, so we've talked about handling customer complaints, but what about a slightly less intense but still common scenario? How do you handle it when a customer simply disagrees with your wine recommendation?
That's a great question. And it's definitely something that every sommelier encounters.
It doesn't have the same high-stakes feeling as a full-blown complaint,
Yeah.
but it still requires some finesse, right?
Absolutely. And it's a great opportunity to show that you are adaptable and customer focused. Remember, it's not about you being right or wrong. It's about finding a wine that the customer will enjoy.
So it's not about your ego, it's about being a good host and a good guide.
Exactly. Start by engaging them in a conversation, just like we talked about before. Ask them about their preferences, what they typically enjoy, any particular flavor profiles they're drawn to or regions they're curious about.
So it's back to being that wine detective, gathering clues to solve the case of the perfect bottle.
Love that. Once you've gathered some information about their palate, you can circle back and explain your reasoning behind your initial recommendation. You might say something like, I recommended this Sauvignon Blanc because of its crisp acidity and citrus notes, which I thought would pair beautifully with the delicate flavors of your seafood pasta. However, if you typically prefer richer whites, we could explore a Chardonnay that has a bit more body and oak influence.
That makes a lot of sense. You're not dismissing their preferences, but you are providing context and offering alternatives in a way that's helpful and informative.
Exactly. It's all about creating a dialogue and guiding them towards a choice they'll feel good about. Okay, now let's switch gears and talk about some of the more practical aspects of being a sommelier. A question you might get in an interview is, how do you ensure proper storage and handling of wine in a restaurant setting?
That's a good one. It might seem straightforward, but proper storage is absolutely crucial for preserving the quality and longevity of those precious bottles.
You're absolutely right. This is your chance to really demonstrate your in-depth understanding of wine preservation. Be sure to highlight the key elements: temperature control, humidity, light exposure, and even bottle orientation.
Okay, so break down those elements for me. What are some key points to emphasize?
You want to emphasize that you're meticulous about maintaining a consistent temperature in the cellar or wine storage area. Ideally, you'd aim for a temperature between 55 and 65 degrees Fahrenheit. You'll also want to mention the importance of humidity, keeping it around 70% to prevent corks from drying out.
It sounds like you're creating the perfect little microclimate for those wines to thrive.
Exactly. And of course, you also want to mention that you understand the importance of protecting wines from excessive light and vibration, both of which can negatively impact their quality over time.
It's all about attention to detail and really treating those bottles with care. Now let's dive into one final high-pressure scenario that I'm sure many sommeliers have experienced: the unexpected rush. You know, when a large party arrives without a reservation, and suddenly you're scrambling to accommodate their requests.
Oh, I've definitely been there. It's definitely a test of your ability to stay calm, think quickly on your feet, and manage a situation that could easily spiral into chaos.
Exactly. So how would you answer the interview question?
Hmm.
Can you describe a time when you had to handle a high-pressure situation related to wine service? What kind of scenario would really impress an interviewer?
You want to choose a scenario that demonstrates your ability to adapt, problem solve, and remain composed under pressure. For example, you could talk about a time when you were faced with a large party who arrived without a reservation and requested an extensive line pairing for a multi-course meal, all while the restaurant was already bustling with other diners.
Oh, wow. That's like a sommelier's worst nightmare. So many moving parts, so many potential pitfalls. How would you even begin to approach that situation?
Well, first and foremost, you take a deep breath and quickly assess the situation. How many guests are in the party? What are their dietary needs or preferences? What wines are available that would complement the requested menu and meet their needs within a reasonable time frame?
So many things to consider, and all under pressure.
Exactly. You want to demonstrate that you can handle the pressure while still delivering excellent service. Explain that you would communicate clearly and effectively with both the kitchen and the guests, keeping them informed of the situation and managing expectations.
It's a delicate balancing act of expertise, communication, and grace under pressure.
Absolutely. And if you can weave in a specific anecdote about how you successfully navigated a similar situation in the past, even better. It shows that you're not just talking the talk, you've walked the walk.
That's great advice. Now, before we move on to our final question, I wanted to circle back to something you mentioned earlier, the importance of staying current with new wines and industry trends. It seems like the world of wine is constantly evolving.
It absolutely is. There's always something new to discover, a new region to explore, a new winemaking technique to learn about. It's what keeps this job so interesting.
It really does.
Yeah.
So how do you personally stay ahead of the curve? What are some of the things you do to keep your knowledge fresh and your palate sharp?
For me, it's all about actively seeking out new information and experiences. I make a point of attending industry events and conferences, reading wine publications and blogs, and participating in blind tastings whenever I can. I also love connecting with other sommeliers on online forums and social media groups. It's a great way to swap stories, share recommendations, and stay up to date on the latest buzz in the wine world.
So it's like a never-ending journey of discovery and learning. It's about being a lifelong student of the vine.
I love that way of putting it. And when you're genuinely passionate about something, that enthusiasm really shines through. Now, before we wrap up this deep dive, I wanted to circle back to RoleCatcher's career guide and talk a bit about career advancement for sommeliers.
Yeah, this is a great point. I mean, I'm sure many aspiring sommeliers dream of not just working in the field, but maybe even climbing the ranks, becoming a head sommelier, or maybe even opening their own wine-centric establishment someday.
Absolutely. It's a field with a lot of potential for growth, both within a traditional restaurant setting and beyond.
So let's start with that traditional path. What does upward mobility look like for a sommelier working in a restaurant?
Well, the classic trajectory would be starting as a sommelier, then working your way up to head sommelier, and eventually perhaps even becoming the wine director for a restaurant group.
So there's definitely room to grow and take on more responsibility within that structure. But what about those who have entrepreneurial aspirations? What are some of the paths to venturing out on your own in the wine world?
That's where things get really exciting. The guide highlights some really interesting entrepreneurial avenues, like opening your own wine bar, starting a retail wine shop, or even offering consulting services to restaurants or private collectors.
Oh, wow. So many possibilities. It seems like the options are as diverse as the world of wine itself.
I'd say that's a pretty accurate comparison. But no matter which path a sommelier chooses, whether it's the traditional route or blazing their own trail, one thing remains constant: the need for continuous learning.
Absolutely. The wine world is constantly evolving, so it's essential to stay curious and keep those palates sharp.
What are some ways that aspiring sommeliers can continue their education and stay ahead of the curve?
The guide really emphasizes the importance of ongoing education. There's some amazing certifications out there, like the Certified Sommelier exam or the WSET Level 3 award in wines.
Oh, yeah, those are like the gold standard, right? Those certifications carry a lot of weight. They do. And besides deepening your knowledge, these certifications also signal to potential employers that you're serious about your craft and committed to professional growth.
It's like a badge of honor in the wine world.
Exactly. And it's not just about formal education either. Don't underestimate the value of hands-on experience. Seek out opportunities to participate in blind tastings, attend industry conferences, maybe even volunteer at a local winery. Any chance to taste, learn, and connect with other passionate people in the industry is invaluable.
That's such a great point. It's not just about what you know, it's about who you know and the experiences you share.
Couldn't have said it better myself. The wine world is all about connection and collaboration, sharing knowledge, and inspiring one another to appreciate the artistry and the craft that goes into every bottle.
Beautifully said. Well, I think that's the perfect note to end on. It's been such a fascinating journey exploring the world of wine sommeliers, from those nerve-wracking interview questions to the exciting career paths that await those with a passion for the vine.
Cheers to that. And remember, RoleCatcher is there every step of the way with its insights, guidance, and those incredible AI-powered tools to help you navigate this exciting world and unlock your full potential.
Absolutely. So whether you're a seasoned sommelier or just starting your journey in the world of wine, keep those glasses raised and those palates curious. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time.